Hey everybody, it's GoblinX, and welcome back to some more Magic Arena, and today we'll be playing another traditional draft of Shadows over Innistrad Remastered. Without further ado, let's get into the draft. We get to start things off with a Duskwatch Recruiter here, which is going to be a potential card draw engine if we have the mana available to dump into this thing while being a pretty aggressive body. 2 mana for a 2/2, but if anybody doesn't cast any spells during their turn, then it will flip into a 3/3 Kralin Horde Howler that can start beating down and letting you cast your hand for cheap. So Duskwatch Recruiter does a lot for the mana cost, so we'll scoop that up. For the next best cards here, I'm not super into the Seasons Past rare, but you can play some self-mill strategies in the format, where this can be a big amount of card draw late, but it is quite slow. I do like Make Mischief a lot. This is great at chipping away and clearing out some 1 toughness creatures, like maybe Devilthorn Foxes and stuff, while giving you a Devil token that can then trade off into a 2 toughness creature. But honestly, there's nothing much exciting in the pack outside of the Duskwatch Recruiter. I think Make Mischief is cool and all, but Recruiter is quite a bit ahead. For pack 1, pick 2, we do not see very many good cards here. There's a Weirding Wood for the splashier, grindier decks for some mana fixing, and it's got the Investigate mechanic that basically draws you a card, but you have to actually spend a couple mana to get the card out of those clues that it provides. There is a Byway Courier, which is a fine creature to trade off and get your card draw out of later. I'll probably just take the Byway Courier to go with the Duskwatch Recruiter, but we could also just take a removal spell like Alchemist's Greeting here, pushing into a second color, but I don't think this is efficient enough to take over the Recruiter. It does have the Madness mechanic, so when you have ways to discard it, it does get super efficient, but that's really just a red-black strategy where you can find the ways to discard this card, so rather take the Courier and be open to any secondary color, instead of taking a card that's kind of like a black-red removal spell mostly, and these uncommons are just not particularly exciting. So Byway Courier it shall be, and for pack 1, pick 3, green is working out perfectly fine for us, because that's a pick 3 pack Guardian. There's also a pick 3 Incendiary Flow, which is fierce competition. This is just a really efficient removal spell that also exiles in a format where there are a lot of graveyard mechanics. So maybe it is supposed to just be Incendiary Flow, but Pack Guardian is quite powerful as well. 4 mana for a 4/3 with Flash, so you can play it at instant speed, and if you have an extra land in your hand when you play it, you're spending 4 mana to get a 4/3 and a 2/2 at instant speed, which is an insane amount of stats. So I'm going to take the Pack Guardian here, but I think if we didn't take it, Incendiary Flow is easily the pick. Outside of those two, there are some other decent cards. The Ulrich's Kindred working well in a Werewolf deck. The Vessel of Nascency works really well in a Delirium deck. Delirium is a mechanic in this format that wants you to have as many different card types in your graveyard as possible. So by milling 3 or 4 cards and sacrificing an enchantment, you can get a lot of card types in your graveyard pretty quick. So I do like that Vessel. But we're going to take the Pack Guardian here because we don't have anything that cares about Delirium yet. And right now we can just take a bunch of good aggressive green cards. And for pick 4, now we can take a good aggressive white card. There's both a Dauntless Cathar and a Town Gossipmonger. Both of these pretty good. I probably overvalue Town Gossipmonger a little bit, but I am going to take it here. It's not really a 1 mana 2/3, but if you put in a good amount of work, it will play that way, because you can flip this thing by tapping another creature you control. So it's not like it's going to be attacking for 2 damage on turn 2, but with the perfect curve, it will be attacking as a 2/3 on turn 3. And even if it takes a little bit longer, that is a lot of stats for only 1 mana. There is the Dauntless Cathar. The reason I really like this card is it's kind of like one of the creatures that dies and draws you a card when it dies, where it dies, and then from your graveyard you can spend 2 mana and exile it to get a 1/1 flyer. So it's kind of like it draws you a little 1/1 flyer, which is decent in a long game of Magic. It can chip away for a lot of damage or be a little chump blocker, so I do like that. Dauntless Cathar as well. Pick 5, gonna just be Bound by Moonsilver. One of the better removal spells in the set, really self-explanatory. It's a pacifism that you can move around by sacrificing permanents. So really nice. You move it around to their bigger creatures. When they play bigger creatures, it's very flexible. Easily the pick here. If it weren't in here, probably just Guardian of Pilgrims, because we're heading towards green-white aggro, But I do like Make Mischief a lot, so that might get me to speculate towards red, but I've already kind of spoken my piece on that card. For pick 6 now, we do kind of just miss on color, and now we see a pick 6 Galvanic Bombardment, so I think I'm just going to take that. It's a bit speculative, but just 1 mana instant speed, 2 damage to a creature has been good and limited forever. And this is that. The minor upside that this one gets is that if you draft multiple copies, it'll keep getting bigger. So this is really good for blue-red spells, but super fine removal in any red deck. And speaking of blue-red spells, drag under a great tempo play to slow down your opponent, draw a card, and take inventory, a card that's great with multiples. This is a really good pack for the blue-red spells archetype, but it's pretty far from green and white. Alright, pack 1, pick 7, Hinterland Loggers, a super playable 2-drop. A 2-mana 2-1 is not very exciting, but once in a blue moon, somebody's not going to cast spells during their turn, and you're going to have a 2-mana 4-2 trample for a little while, which is insane. So the absolute dream is if you have some instant speed stuff to do on turn 3, you just play this on your turn 2, and turn 3 you just pass the turn and flip it, and then you have already made it a 4-2 trampler. So there are definitely some ways to draft around it and make it a little stronger, but pretty good card there. Speaking of pretty good cards, Gnarlwood Dryad's great, because a 1-mana 1/1 Death Touch is already good, and if you hit Delirium, a 1-mana 3/3 is obviously pretty nuts. But there's also Travel Preparations, and this one's a little more narrow, but because we are potentially heading into green-white aggro, I think it can be pretty great in that deck, where you're getting 4 power and toughness off this one card, getting to put 4 +1/+1 counters basically wherever you want, so I'm going to take the Travel Prep here. Pick 9, we do get a Byway Courier to come back. Love the card, I'll scoop it up here. For other solid cards, if you're drafting yourselves, I think Dusk Feaster is fine, because creatures aren't quite as good as they are in Modern Limited, where if you can get Delirium consistently, a 5-mana 4/5 flyer is actually pretty good in this set. But then there's Grathmole that's pretty nice if you have a lot of clue tokens. Really grindy card for a long game. I think those are my 2 favorites outside of the Courier. Pick 10 now. There's a Wildfield Scarecrow, which can fix your mana and get an artifact in your grave towards Delirium. Technically an artifact and a creature, but it's not hard to get a creature in your grave for Delirium. There's a Dawngryff, which is generally unexciting because it doesn't have an interesting creature type or anything. It's just a 2/2 flyer, but if you run a lot of Travel Preparation style cards, it can get a little more enticing. I don't think I'm trying to do much splashy stuff with something like a Weirding Wood, so I'll speculate on a Dawngryff. That might end up being okay. And here's a couple good graveyard-filling Delirium-style cards, a Vessel of Nascency and a Grapple with the Past. I think both of these are pretty nice. Grapple is really fun in the self-mill decks, where if you draw it late in the game, this is just whatever you want from your graveyard, basically. But I think I like the Vessel a little better for the way our deck's looking. We're probably not trying to grapple late game to pick up whatever we want. If we end up playing a self-mill style card, it's probably more likely to be like a Vessel of Nascency to fuel some kind of Delirium aggressive threat. With 2 Byway Couriers already, maybe I take the Confront the Unknown combat trick, because I'm pretty heavy on creatures. But I do think Byway Courier is pretty good. I'm definitely happy to be in green. But let's take the Confront the Unknown. Solid trick. By itself, 1-mana +1/+1 is not that exciting, but you get to keep that clue and draw a card off of that later. And this looks like a great draft pod to try to be blue-red spells, getting a pick 14 take inventory. The that flashback spell, I forget what it's called, but that spell's good too. The 3 mana, look at the top 4, put 1 into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. That was the other card in that pack, so just 2 great blue spells for a blue-red spells deck. Again, I think we're in a great position to be green-white as well, so we're not likely to pivot onto the blue-red spells, but if we saw one of the big uncommon win conditions for that deck, particularly the one that makes it 2/2 for each instant source in your grave, this would be a solid draft pod to go there. But pack 2, pick 1, we're going to stick to our guts, stick to what we have here, take a collective effort. This can put a +1/+1 counter on every one of your creatures. It can destroy an enchantment, it can destroy a creature with power 4 or greater, and it can do multiples of those if you tap some creatures. So ideally, the way that you want to use this to win the game is blow up their power 4 creature and buff your whole board. That is the most consistent one. And since this is best 2 or 3 draft, we could sideboard it in and out when it is going to be good or bad. So I'll definitely take a collective effort there. Unfortunately, pack 2, pick 2, there are already no good cards on color. There's still the white common and the green common, but they're not very good cards. The rare's great. I'll probably just rare draft that here for my collection. 5 mana 3/3 flyer, you can sack 3 other creatures to flip it into a 6/5 and make your opponent sack 3 creatures. So basically you can just make it so each player has to sack 3 creatures off of this, which is pretty nuts. Yeah, it's not super likely to get played, but I'm not interested in Wolfkin Bond or Dawngryff that much. I already have the one Dawngryff if it's going to end up being great. And it's super early to take another. Alright, pack 2, pick 3. We do have another Byway Courier. I suppose with the really late take inventory, we could try to take an Elder Deep Fiend here and move towards blue. The emerge mechanic on this card is what makes it pretty good. You can sack a creature and reduce the emerge cost by that creature's mana value. So if you sack a 4 mana creature, then you can cast this at instant speed for only 3 mana, get a 5/6 out of nowhere, tap all your opponent's lands, and block their like 4/4 attacker or something. So pretty strong reason to be in blue. Maybe some weird green-blue tempo deck ends up being a thing here. Take that over Steadfast Cathar or Byway Courier on the off chance it gets played, because it is quite powerful. Pack 2, pick 4 does shoot us right back towards green-white, because the most prevalent creature type in green and white is human, so Courageous Outrider, almost always 4 mana 3/4, draw a card, which is great value, so we'll take that. Other premium cards, take inventory being number 1, but Faithbearer Paladin's been okay too, just a big chunky lifelinker. Alright, nothing here really. Forbidden Alchemy, that's the card name I was thinking of. This card's great in blue-red spells as well, because you need to dig for very specific win conditions that you don't usually have very many copies of, so digging 4 cards deep is pretty nice, but that's just not what this deck is doing. Probably just take a Thornhide Wolves, honestly, for the top of the curve, just a 5 mana 4/5. Yeah, these blue cards aren't going to be great for a blue-green pile. I guess the Illuminator will be. Doubling up our investigation to give us additional clues could be pretty real. Still think we're much more likely in white, but Thornhide Wolves is not going to be particularly exciting, so get another blue spell towards that Elder Deep Fiend speculation. Now we have an Ingenious Scab, an Aim High, and a Steadfast Cathar. I guess I'm low enough on 2 mana creatures in the core green-blue deck, or sorry, green-white deck, to take a Cathar towards that over a Scab, because I also just don't have a ton of ways to trigger Prowess, even if I do end up in green-blue. So let's grab a Cathar at 2 mana. Ooh, pick 7 Lingering Souls. This is one of the best flashback spells. 3 mana to get 2 1/1 flyers is already worth a card in this format, and if you can flash it back, this card is busted. 4 1/1 flyers off of just 1 spell is insane. So we take Lingering Souls, and if we ever see something like a Forsaken Sanctuary again, we're going to draft it super highly, so we do have that off chance of making Lingering Souls, instead of just good, making Lingering Souls insane. So now, with our heavy human count, True Faith Censor becomes a decent card. 2 mana to equip to give something +1/+1 vigilance is fine. 2 mana to give something +2/+1 vigilance actually starts getting kind of exciting as an equipment, and there are some cards in this format that can give you a bit of a benefit for having equipment on the board. Take a 3rd Byway Courier here, I suppose. Also take the Mockery of Nature, but generally I don't tend to draft Emerge cards very highly unless they're one of like the insane rares. The Emerge stuff doesn't tend to work out super great in my experience, so I'll just take a Courier here. Another big Emerge rare if we get pushed towards green-blue, I guess. I guess this one's an uncommon, but still. Random Flash Spider, not that exciting. I'll take a 2nd Take Inventory to get that buff there, but we do have a few clues, so maybe Daring Sleuth would be cool towards green-blue. I think I'd rather just get duplicates of Take Inventory. I just really like stacking up duplicates. Should probably just take Faithbearer Paladin here, honestly. It's very nice with True Faith Sensor, and yeah, again, we're not that likely getting pushed to blue. That's just our backup plan if something really weird happens. So yeah, we'll take the Faith Bearer for the main colors. And see what we open up. Pack number 3. Really just looking for a little bit more removal. We've only got 2 removal spells right now. And like a bomb, basically. That's what would make me happy. Find an on-color bomb, find a removal spell or 2. Unfortunately, we find an excellent off-color spell. The Hanweir Garrison's one of the strongest rares in the format. 3 mana for a 2/3 that spits out 2 1/1s attacking every time it attacks. So the first time it attacks, you hit for 4. The second time, because you're also attacking with the old 1/1s, you're hitting for like 6. It stacks up so fast, but it's a red card. We're not going to be splashing it in. There's not a lot of good fixing in the format. It's just not happening. I could just take a Lunarch Mantle, which has been a big overperformer for me. Just randomly getting flying has been massive. And the removal's not super duper efficient in this format, outside of like a million blue bounce spells. So the auras have actually been pretty alright. So I'll take the Lunarch Mantle. The Noose Cobra thing is also fine. The 2 mana 2/2 that you can discard cards to give it +1/+1. But because we're going to have 0 madness in this color pair, it's not nearly as exciting as most uncommons for this deck, I would say. And now I'll just take a Thraben Inspector. This is a great value play. 1 mana 1/2, so already a good stat line for the cost, and you draw a card off the clue token. Just a sick value play to curve out with. There's an Intrepid Provisioner that would be great on curve on turn 4. There's also a Traverse the Ulvenwald, which would give us some fixing towards our Lingering Souls here, towards the potential flashbacks. So that'd be a nice card to get back on the wheel. Pack 3, pick 3. I could take a Terrarian trying to get to the Lingering Souls. There's the blue-red spells, win condition, the Rise from the Tides. Always going to be a little sad to see that when I'm not doing blue-red spells because it's such a powerful and fun archetype in the format. I don't think we're interested in Devilthorn Fox, Apothecary Geist. Briarbridge Patrol could be okay. Tamio's Journal is a card draw, but it's really slow. It's probably just astronomically slow for a relatively aggressive deck like this. Guess I'll just take a Terrarian, but I don't think we'll be using that. Alright, I will happily take a Hamlet Captain here. We are going to be a human-heavy deck. We're at 11 right now. This will be our 12th human. Whenever this attacks, buff all our other humans, or whenever it blocks. That's just wonderful. Dauntless Cathar is also wonderful, and we have not gotten any other Dauntless Cathars to come back. So I don't think we'll get the Cathar back, but I think Captain's probably better on curve. So we gotta take that. Another Bound by Moonsilver, incredibly happy to take that. We did say we needed a little bit more removal. We were looking for like removal and a bomb here. Didn't find our bomb, but we found a bit more removal, which is great. Oh, we could have had 2 Rise from the Tides, maybe even a Mystic Retrieval to pick them back up. Oh, this would have been such a fun blue-red spells pod. We don't have enough Wolves and Werewolves for Resurgence to do anything, really. Borrowed Grace, if we've got a super wide board state, it can pop off, but I think I'd rather just take a Shieldmate. It's got interesting synergies with our 2 mana Werewolves. There's not a ton of them, but if we do have a 2 mana Werewolf on board and we draw a Shieldmate, then I get to spend turn 3 just passing the turn to flip them while still putting a creature on board, which is nice. That's the benefit of having an instant speed creature there. Here, I kind of think I have to take another Thraben Inspector for value, but Provisioner is tempting. Getting that extra damage in on curve. I think Inspector's just so good, though, that we take that. And now there's a Sigardian Priest, which is kind of like removal for us for non-humans. So, sorta helps, sorta counts. I wouldn't really want to play Apparatus unless you have a lot of Delirium cards. I don't think we're taking that here, even with our lower removal count, so we'll take a Briarbridge Patrol. But probably cut that, and now I will happily take a Provisioner. That is definitely going to make the cut. Devilthorn Fox is just not going to make the cut, so... Should I ruin somebody's day? No, if somebody managed to get onto the blue-red train. Let's let them get that Rise from the Tides. That is criminally late, though. And now... we're not playing any of this. I guess I just take an uncommon. Oh. Dang. I mean, I was correct with my early read that this was going to be a good blue-red spells draft pod. I just think... even when you have a solid read like that, I just don't think that you can jump onto blue-red really hard without knowing that you have one of the win conditions. Because again, even if you get every galvanic bombardment, every take inventory, every drag to the tides, all these great commons and uncommons, they don't win the game by themselves. So if I got every one of those, then I could just end up with a deck that kills everything my opponent does and draws a bunch of cards, and then just mills itself because I don't have a win condition. So, unfortunate to see both Rise from the Tides in the last packs, but nobody else took them, so if we'd seen one in like pack 2, that probably would have been early enough to try to do it, but like pack 2, pick 1 or something at the latest. If we saw it pack 1, we would have been on blue-red hardcore in this draft pod. I think we still ended up in an okay spot. I don't think we're playing Terrarian in here just for the Lingering Souls. We're probably just playing this for the 1/1 spirits at this point. We've got 47 cards here. It is 20 creatures. I can cut like 3 of those. I also have a Lingering Souls. It's like 21 creatures right now. So cut like 4 creatures to keep it simple. Ideally don't want to cut any humans, but if there's one that's pretty bad, we can cut it. Like Briarbridge Patrol doesn't seem great. Seems like our worst 4-drop there. 5 more cards to cut. Vessel of Nascency doesn't really do anything in this deck. Still 4 more to cut. We'll just cut a non-human like the Hippogriff. It's me at 43, 17 creatures, 9 non-creatures. Mostly non-creatures now, ideally, but we can still cut 1 more creature again because the Lingering Souls. I think I'm cutting mostly non-creatures, and this is probably a bit much when it comes to ways to just buff creatures. Right, I've got an aura, 2 equipment, basically 2 auras with travel prep and a combat trick. Feels like too many of these. We probably just cut like 3 of these, and I still have 2 cards for buffing the board. I think I like Mantle and Travel Prep the best out of all these options. I do quite like having like a sensor for the Faithbearer Paladins, though. That card is gross with those. Don't love cutting a land. We still have 2 5-drops, but the average is 2.6. What happens when I cut these? Where does the average go? Goes up a little bit, goes up to 2.7. Still not a horrifically high average mana value, and I can dump some mana into some Inspector Clue tokens, looking for lands, and maybe I'll have a flipped Recruiter if I'm super lucky to cast these a little early. But yeah, mainly some random clue tokens. So like we just dump all of our hand that we can, our 1, 2, 3 drops, and if I ever get stuck on mana from playing my 5-drop, at that point that's when I like sack a clue or 2, digging for the 5th land. I think that's a reasonable reason to maybe be okay with cutting down to 16. Although the opposite is also true. Like if I flood out, then I can dump all my mana into clues. So it'd be a decent reason for keeping the 17 or even going to 18 maybe. Could see it either way. I guess we'll see how it plays out, but I'm going to try out starting with the 16 build and plan to just dump everything that I can afford to. And once I can't afford to cast anything in my hand anymore, I just spend whatever mana I have on random clues between inspectors and couriers mostly. And if I don't get any of those 5, then I guess I just don't have clues to dump the mana on, but that's 5 cards in the deck. That's pretty decent for clue providers. So yeah, let's cut a land of our least represented color, which is green, and then boom, call it a deck. 9-8 split thanks to the fortified village. Yeah, looks pretty simple to me. Looks pretty good. I think we will call it a deck here. All right, here's a look at our deck list for today. We're on a green-white humans aggro deck here. Pretty solid curve of creatures with a lot of clue tokens lying around to get some extra card draw between some Thraben Inspectors and some Byway Couriers. We've also got a Mana Sink on a Duskwatch Recruiter for card draw, so a lot of just incidental card advantage throughout the game that should help as well. But as you can see, also pretty aggressive curve of creatures. 3 1-drops, 5 2-drops, 5 3-drops, because Lingering Souls is another way to get some creatures on board, and then 3 4-drop creatures and 2 5-drop creatures, so a little something all over the curve to constantly be adding stuff to the board, and hopefully attacking in for enough damage to keep our opponent on the back foot, especially with some cards like Lunarch Mantle, Travel Preparations, and True Faith Sensor to buff our smaller creatures into being big enough to still matter in combat. Outside of all that, we've just got our few removal spells, our Bound by Moonsilvers, and our Collective Effort, but it's a pretty simple, pretty aggressive deck. Looks like a solid one, and hopefully it plays out as well as it looks, but we'll find out soon enough as we head into the gameplay. All right, here we are for round 1. We're going to choose to be on the play here, and hand's a little high on mana, but I will keep it here with the turn 2 Hamlet Captain, a removal spell if our opponent plays anything good, and then a 4-drop, so ideally we draw anything that costs 1, 2, or 3 mana, and that gives us something to do turn 3. And we did draw Sigardian Priest, so not the greatest turn 3 play, but we'll definitely jam it out in the middle here. Playing against a red-black deck, that is going to be an archetype focused around discarding cards to cast them for cheap with their Madness abilities. There's a Thermo Alchemist for our opponent, which is going to be really annoying for us, because even if I bind it, it's still going to be pinging me for damage every turn with its ability. So not happy with that. And the Hamlet Captain only buffs other humans we control when it attacks. I could make a bluff attack here for free, but I'm just going to hold it back because I think I already passed through. I should have probably bluff attacked with 3 mana up. That's where they might not block. But since I cast the Priest pre-combat, they're just never going to block there, so I'm just tapping Hamlet Captain for nothing, basically. Now, they were still pretty unlikely to let the damage through. Like, they're probably just always going to block. But it would have been worth a shot, because we're unlikely to need an untapped Captain. But they're red, so they could have haste stuff. Who knows? Alright, so now I can curve out with the Provisioner here to buff the Captain. Get in for 4 with it. I do have something up, but that could just be Thermo Alchemist's ability, so fingers crossed that's what it is, and it's not a 1-mana burn spell like a Galvanic thing. Now I'm literally tapped out, so there's... I mean, I'll still have a 3/3 up on blocks. I'm actually going to attack with Priest, just so if they do have like some kind of magical 1-mana removal spell or something, where they might want to like give Alchemist Death Touch and block Captain or something, I still get 2 damage in. I don't know. I don't think there's anything like that in this format, but I don't think there's any downside to attacking with Priest there. So there's a Faithless Looting. They're definitely doing the Thermo Alchemist thing here. Kind of looks like a red-black version of the blue-red spells deck. They definitely both like to play Thermo Alchemist. Love to play these Make Mischief style spells that are a creature and an instant or sorcery at the same time. Certainly love to play cheap burn like Fiery Temper. It looks like a blue-red spells deck in just secretly hidden behind a bunch of swamps. It's like the red-black version of that. So they're going to Fiery Temper the Provisioner. Shoot it for 3 and kill it. And they're going to play a Ravenous Bloodseeker. So the Bloodseeker can actually threaten to kill the Hamlet Captain if they discard a card. So we want to bind that. And the plus side here is I've got enough mana. I mean, I guess I could still bind the Alchemist and just tap Bloodseeker every turn. Don't think I want to do that, though. I think I'd rather just bind the Bloodseeker. play a Cathar, keep attacking wide. The thing that I like a lot about this is that because of Bound by Moonsilver's ability, I can always just move it to something else. Now, they do have an opportunity to make it so I can't do that because I put it on Bloodseeker specifically. They could discard 2 cards to kill my Bound by Moonsilver, but then I got a 3-for-1 on them. I killed their Bloodseeker and made them discard 2 cards, so I don't think that's the end of the world if they manage to stop my Bound by Moonsilver from moving around by discarding 1,000 cards. Okay. And speaking of, I think now is the time. A 2/4 blocker is real big, although we could just Sigardian Priest still. That might be better. Sigardian Priest the Unhallowed. Play a True Faith Sensor on the Captain. I can attack with both of these, and Alchemist can't block well. That's reasonable. I could also just play the Gossip Monger and not tap anything. So I have another creature out. I think I have to tap something here, so I guess I could meet in the middle and play the Gossip Monger, but just not equip the True Faith Sensor to anything yet. It's also fine, because their only blocker is going to be 0 power. Alright, so tap the Unhallowed. Better to get an extra 2 damage in from a True Faith Sensor, or just get the Gossip Monger ready to be swinging soon. I think I want to get the Gossip Monger ready to swing. So let's send in the team and then just play an unequipped Sensor and a Gossip Monger. Sending in the team so that the Cathar is actually 3 power. If I just send in the Cathar, they just block it and take 0. So I have to send the Captain in alongside it. Alright, there's a Gossip Monger, which even if I don't flip it, is attacking as a 2/2 as long as I keep this Hamlet Captain around. We have seen a forest from our opponent now, by the way. They kind of just snuck it in there a little unnoticed with its like dark border. It's a little more incognito than normal. But yeah, they've got a green splash in there. And they've got it available. Oh my god. Travel Preparations is pretty big here, and it's exactly the mana cost where I can do it twice and still tap something. Let's go for it. Just spread it out, I think. Spread it out like this, probably. Priest it up again. Let's see what all their open mana's for here. Show me the monies. And we're probably going to put a True Faith Sensor on a Gossip Monger in the future so that I can send it in with Vigilance and still flip it at the same time. Could be a big, like, surprise. Speaking of big surprises, we are down to 13 against the Thermo Alchemist with 2 power on their board, not holding up any blockers. There are some things that might just kill us out of nowhere. Not a lot, but a couple. Probably higher rarity things, or they'd have to have, like, a bunch of cards here. Ooh, that's a big one. Lightning Axe discarding a Weirded Vampire to cast it for 3, so they can trade into the Hamlet Captain. Yeah, that's a huge, huge, huge deal here. Not towards, like, putting us to 0 life, but towards getting them to the winning board state. Could move the Bound by Moonsilver right now, but I think I'm waiting to do it during my turn. When I go to my next combat. But yeah, I could just immediately sack a land to put it onto the Gavany Unhallowed, but then I have 1 less mana next turn, which could matter if I draw like a 2-mana spell. I'll want to play a 2-mana spell, equip a True Faith Sensor to somebody, and maybe tap something with the Priest. A lot of things I could want to do with my mana. So I don't want to sack a land right now to move the pacifism to the Gavany Unhallowed. but it's an option. So Faithless Looting, 2 mana up to Madness, whatever they draw into. Swamp, though. No Madness. And a Ravenous Bloodseeker for another blocker. Alright, they're down to 7. Gossipmonger is going to be a massive attacker. There's another bound? Okay. I suppose I don't have the mana to play a bound and tap a thing, but that's fine, because then Sigardian Priest is untapped when we attack, which means I can flip the Gossipmonger at instant speed. Which won't find lethal if they don't block, but it will give it like an extra 2 toughness out of nowhere if they're trying to kill it by like discarding 2 cards or something that can matter. Actually, they can't discard 2 cards anyway, because then Bloodseeker dies. So they can't block with a 5/0 Bloodseeker. Alright, chump with the Alchemist, it looks like. Yep, and ping us for 1. Fair deal, fair deal. Pass the turn from there. They have to be able to kill not a 5/4, but actually a 6 toughness card, because again, I can flip the Gossipmonger at instant speed to give it 2 more toughness. Make it a 2/3 at base stats instead of a 1/1 at base stats. Alright, so Macabre Waltz, discarding a Weirded Vampire. So just good graveyard recursion there. They have the 4 toughness they need on board. I think I should flip the Gossipmonger now anyway, though, so that I can use my Sigardian Priest to tap something. If I draw into another removal spell, that I can just instantly kill them. Although I think I only have 1 removal spell left, and it doesn't actually kill any of these. But yeah, if I hit Collective Effort, I could kill them, because I could move the bound to the Vampire and then use Collective Effort on the Unhallowed and then tap the Bloodseeker. So yeah, I think it was worth flipping right there, even though it makes it so I can't like combat trick them here. So now their plan is probably try to double block and make it 6 power against the 6 toughness card. So I should tap down the Bloodseeker, make them chump with the bigger card, chump with the 3/3 here. Cool. That Unhallowed getting bigger and bigger. With all these Bound by Moonsilvers making me maybe want to sack permanents later, I am just going to jam out my land. Might not be 100% correct, because now they like know they don't have to play around any instants right now. But having as many permanents on the board to sack and move Bound by Moonsilvers around whenever I need to feels pretty good. Okay. Now they do not have enough power to kill the Rabble, even if I don't tap a thing. So let's just send in the Rabble. Force a chump, and then I can tap something down during their end step and during my turn. Ooh. Discard a Weirded Vampire so they can threaten to go for the double block. That is going to force me to tap down a thing right now. For the Incited Rabble to not die, so let's tap the Bloodseeker and force the straight up 3/3 to die here, or the Alchemist. Cool. Alright, so they still threaten a double block next turn, but I have the Sigardian Priest up. At some point it might be interesting. Oh no. I was going to say, at some point it might be interesting to put the True Faith Sensor onto the Sigardian Priest, and then I have a 3/3 and however big the Rabble's going to be on the board for attacks. Ulrich is not cool for me. They can get some damage in here if they want, but the really important part is when it flips, they can start fighting my creatures off. And it is big enough to fight the Rabble and trade, But more importantly, you can fight the priest without dying, even if I put a True Faith sensor onto it. Alright, so are they going to jam in for 7 here? If they do, they are dead to us top decking a collective effort. So I think we hope for that. Come on, top deck. That's a big hit here. I could trade Rabble off, but then I've got no plan against Ulrich. I'm just dying. Here I can, because they went for the attack, I can force Ulrich to chump block, which is a big deal. So at least there's that. Yeah, I could also move a bound to the Ulrich, and then I guess it can't transform and fight anything. I feel like it's probably better to just force Ulrich to chump block than put a bound on it. Alright, chump block Ulrich. Get out of here. I guess the problem with this is if they have even more graveyard recursion, it goes poorly for me. Because they can pick it up and recast it then. We do die to a removal spell now. I guess we die to a removal spell even if I put a bound on the weirded vampire, but I'll still do it here. Fingers crossed. All right, no removal. Ooh, a lifelinker is so big. A lifelinker is so big here. So, because I drew a lifelinker, I think I offer the 2-for-1 trade here. They might get to discard 2 cards and cast some madness stuff, but it would still be trading 1 Rabble for 2 Bloodseekers. And then I get to hold Priest up to be extra safe. Yeah, I hold Priest up, and I have a big lifelinking blocker. I think we do this. Feels safest towards not just getting like removal spell killed out of nowhere next turn. Alright, discard a land. What is the last card? Another land? Okay, cool. So they're 100% playing off the top. If they're 100% playing off the top, I don't think there's any card that just insta-kills us. So I think I can afford to not hold up the tap ability and just buff the lifelinker immediately. But I guess I might as well stay super safe and hold up the tap mana. Yeah, and then next turn I can still just put the sensor onto the lifelinker anyway. Okay. Close game, long game of Magic there. Spicy stuff from our opponent with the Ulrich. I'm very happy to have some Bound by Moonsilvers. It's going to be really good against the Ulrich here. They've got a lot of Madness cards, a lot of graveyard value from Macabre Waltz. Discard value. Do we have anything great here? Confront, I don't think ever looked awesome. It looked fine. Another True Faith sensor. The True Faith sensor did play pretty well. Is there anything that looks just horrible in here that we'd want to swap around? They had a couple cards we could kill with collective effort. They had Ulrich and their big zombie that kept getting bigger. I think I'm still trying that out. I don't think there's anything in here that looked terrible. Lunarch Mantle could be bad. They had a decent amount of removal with a Fiery Temper and a Lightning Axe. If they do one of these in response to us trying to Lunarch Mantle something, that's pretty rough. So maybe we just like the equipment better than the aura here in this matchup. Cut the Lunarch Mantle for another True Faith sensor. Could be legit. It's a nice simple swap. Or we could just put the Confront in over it. Get a little combat tricky. Yeah, I mean, Combat Trick could also randomly save something from a burn spell if we're super lucky. I guess we'll try the Combat Trick out. but mostly just run it back heading into game 2. And here we are for game 2 of round 1 with an excellent keep. Really like this hand, and it just keeps getting better. We get to play Thraben Inspector into Duskwatch Recruiter. I was just going to go Thraben Inspector into Steadfast Cathar and still be perfectly happy with that. I guess that was another thing to maybe consider for the matchup. With our opponent having the Make Mischiefs in there that can do a damage to something and get a devil, maybe our 1 toughness cards are pretty rough, like the Steadfast Cathar. Maybe swap that out for some other creature. Alright, there's the Bloodseeker, there's the Alchemist, there's the Green Splash. Ooh, and an Indulgent Aristocrat. The Aristocrat's a really big problem because it's very good against Bound by Moonsilver. They just sack whatever I bind and buff basically their entire board. Aristocrat is a nuts card. That is not going to be cool. Alright, so I have a Pack Guardian as a 4-mana play that also makes me want to discard a 5th land, so I want to draw into a 5th land, and if I don't play a spell here, I get a 3/3 from Recruiter. So I think I'm pretty cool to pass the turn and just draw a card off this clue token, thanks to the Inspector. Thraben Inspector just secretly the Wombo combo with 2-mana werewolves as well, so that's kind of neat. And I guess if they don't cast 2 spells this turn, we might even be able to just play a 3-mana Pack Guardian discarding a land. I guess I could just do it right now instead of drawing the card even. Yeah, it's not like a surprise blocker, but it's a lot of stats for 3 mana. That's pretty gross. Yeah, I'm gonna just do that. Boom. That's a curve right there. Alright, Thermo Alchemist is gonna ping me. Now we draw into a Lingering Souls. Might as well get some more dorks, I guess. I could play 1-mana Cathar and Travel Prep this turn still. Do I want to play a 1-mana Cathar? Because if I want to do it, I should do it pre-combat, because I think I'm attacking with the Howler here. So Bloodsucker trade wouldn't be great, but we jam in for damage, we clear out some of the board. I think it's fine. Yeah, Cathar Travel Prep could be a pretty legit thing. Sure. Let's go big. And then I can do... I think I want to buff the Cathar so it doesn't just die to a single Make Mischief on their next turn if they have one. Even though I'm hitting for slightly less damage by not putting both the counters onto attacking creatures, I think it's worth getting Cathar out of range from Make Mischief, since we know they have it in their deck, not necessarily in their hand. Okay, on board, if they want to kill the Howler, they have to double block it. And even with what's in their hand, I think they'll have to double block it, right? Because most of their madness spells they would have to kill the Howler seems like it was a lot of the 3/3. Like they're going to get a 3/3 out of nowhere here. Which means maybe to play around the 3/3, we just send these two in. Because if I send in the 2/2 Wolf and then they get a 3/3 at instant speed, they eat it up without losing a creature. And then if it's no madness cards, then I guess they just do nothing with all 4 mana, and we're kind of cool with that too. Alright, drawn to a Courageous Outrider. I think I'm going to save the second half of travel preparations to put counters on my flyers, seeing as they don't have any flyers right now. So just cast a Lingering Souls. Pass, basically. 1-for-1 trades with Pack Guardian, 1-for-1 trades with Recruiter, 1-for-1 with Cathar. They could always sack the Thermo Alchemist to make these 2/4s, which is kind of gross against the 2/2. So there's that to worry about. And I guess that was a decent reason not to attack with the Wolf last turn also. This will attack as a 3/4, but they could still double block with 2 2/4s and I would kill neither if they sack the Alchemist. I think I only attack with Pack Guardian, actually. Weirdly. I always forget that about the Aristocrat. They can sacrifice any creature. It doesn't even need to be a vampire. All right, cool. They're down to 8. And I'm just going to cast Lingering Souls because if we can get the travel prep onto the Lingering Souls, it kills them in 2 attacks. We hit for 4, then we hit for 4. Now there's one turn where they can make mischief us here, since I saved Cathar from it. Makes the spirits weak to it. No make mischief though. Let's prep it up, and I can prep and draw a card from our clue. Good stuff. They've got some pretty chunky blocks on the ground, so let's just have the life total in the sky. Pass the turn. Aristocrat is going to chunk up the Bloodseekers. And the Unhallowed, since that gets bigger when any creature dies. I guess when any of their creatures die. But there's the concession. Nothing to deal with those travel prepped spirit tokens, and now we are 1-0, winning the first round, 2-0 in the games, so really nice start to this draft, but see if we can keep it up as we head into round 2. Here we are on the play for game 1 of round 2, a definite keep. Gossipmonger into Priest, flip Gossipmonger into turn 3 Courier. I will reveal, what am I going to play next turn? Planes or fort? I guess it doesn't really matter. I'll choose the planes. I don't think there's anything in our deck that is like a double white 2-drop or a double green 2-drop. So there's nothing that I would draw that would make me need to play a planes or forest specifically next turn. Play a priest and pass the turn. I'm just going to do this before they play another land. So if they play like a mountain and have the 2 damage burn spell, they won't be able to kill the rabble, because that is an instant. There are some opportunities where it's better to flip your rabble during your opponent's end step at instant speed, but a lot of the time, generally with like an empty board, I kind of like to just do it before they have the mana to play any like instant speed removal that would hit it hard. All right, turn 3. Rabble gets in for free. Priest doesn't really do anything. We'll just drop a Courier here then. I mean, I could play a Logger and then tap their Captive during their upkeep, so they can't use its mana. But then I'd want to not cast a spell next turn, which is really unlikely to happen. Otherwise, I just have a 2-1. And a 3-2 actually attacks into the 1-2, where a 2-1 doesn't. Yeah, I'm just going to play the Courier. It'd be cute. There is somewhat of an argument to just try to tap the Mana Dork. But I think just going for the biggest creature is perfectly reasonable. Don't need to try to get fancy here. When it might not even be worth it, it really depends what's in their hand. Alright, there's a Weirding Wood. Alright, cool. So we would have gotten 0 value from going for the tap there that turn. So at least that turn it played out correctly. I can bind the Captive here, but it'll still give them mana. It just won't be able to transform into the 4/6. Or block. I don't think that's super worth it. I'll just save the bind for now and play another 3/2. Bind whatever they tap out for next turn as a massive blocker, because they're going to have the mana to do so. Awesome. Yeah, I was hoping they would just tap out for like 1 really big creature rather than try to cast 2 smaller creatures, and that is exactly what they did. So we bind their lifelinker and jam in. They're down to 5. We pass the turn again. Important to know, our opponent is on green and white, and we have seen 1 human from them, so Priest is looking a little bit sketchy, as it only works against non-humans. I've only seen 2 of their creatures, but they are in 2 of their 3 colors have a lot of humans in them, and 50% of the 2 creatures that we've seen have been humans, so Priest might want to get swapped out. We'll see if we get any more information this game. Ooh, Rabid Bite is still good even if your Paladin is pacified. Still gain that 3 life from the lifelink during the bite. Do they have double Rabid Bite? Nah, Abundant Maw though. Very nice against Bound by Moonsilver. Yeah, Emerge cards are great against pacifism removal, so that is going to be an issue for us. Now, we can still Priest it down, because it doesn't do anything when it attacks, right? Yeah, just when they cast it. So I can still Priest it down and keep attacking past it. So Priest and Lingering Souls for the turn looks pretty excellent to me. And now that we know they have like big 6/4 non-human creatures, Priest is starting to look like it can stay in the deck. Definitely less considering cutting it at this point. Unburial Rites for the Reanimator spell, picking up their lifelinker, very good. And get their own Sigardian Priest. Alright, so jam in for 6, we'll go to 11. We draw into a Pack Guardian, but no other land in our hand. So I have to attack with the Incited Rabble, which means we might just be trading into the lifelinker, just spend the 4 mana to buff this thing up. Yeah, I think I need to hold my mana open so I can just trade into their lifelinker if they block there. And then I need to Priest down their Maw during their turn, probably. Yeah, I can't Sigardian Priest down the Faithbearer because it's a human. So, alright, we'll trade into the lifelinker to get it out of here. They go up to 7 here. The race is difficult because of that lifelink they got. And they have Unburial Rites' flashback as well, so they get to get it again. Yikes. Yeah, Unburial Rites really looking strong here. It might just win them the game here. It might pop off. Matchup's looking a little sketchy. The Emerge cards against our Pacify is pretty rough for us. Some big humans against the non-human tapper. Not great. And Unburial Rites just a really strong card generally. I'm not loving the potential matchup here. This game is still anyone's game. I think they're a bit favored, not a ton. But they are favored. And Priest down one of our spirits here. I could double block. I lose both of these, but we get the 6/4 out of here, which is kind of a big deal. And I can still pack Guardian to trade into the Faithbearer. I guess not if they hold up Sigardian Priest. Yeah, their Priest is actually looking pretty bad for us this game. Do I just go to 5 then? And even if I trade into the Abundant Maw, they're still going to have a 4/6 to be attacking with. Whenever they run out of stuff to do, they just spend the mana to flip that. Yeah. Because they're still going to have a 4/6 and a 3/4, I think I need to hold off on the trade just yet. Try to just have my Priest keep locking that down. Now I have to choose between having the mana up to tap the Maw with the Priest while playing Pack Guardian, or having the land to discard to the Pack Guardian. Which of those two things is better? Probably having the land for the Pack Guardian. It's not great though. They are going to Priest down a spirit on attacks. I even have to hold it on blocks at this point, right? Because I flash in a Pack Guardian, they tap down the 4/3. I want to have a 3/2 and a 1/1 still to block, like an Abundant Maw. I guess I'd still rather trade my 2/2 Wolf and my Byway Courier into like Abundant Maw than trading the Flying Spirit and the Byway Courier into it, so... Also, it almost feels like if they attack with Faithbearer Paladin, I have to try to kill that instead. I guess I hold that back, and then if they attack with Maw and Faithbearer Paladin, we try to get the... Ooh, +2/+2 is going to make it real hard to kill that Faithbearer Paladin. Oh, Lord. Well... Ooh, tap pre-combat? Never mind, easiest kill ever. Actually going to be super easy to kill Faithbearer Paladin. Barely an inconvenience. Could even kill both of these, but then I have nothing to deal with the Ulvenwald captive. So if I do this... I just have two 1/1 flyers left against a 4/6 and a 1/2, but they also have the Murderer's Axe they can move around. It's probably this as the play. And keep using the Priest on the Maw. Better to keep using the Priest on the Maw or just straight trade in the Maw? It ain't awesome either way. I like keeping the Priest, because then if they put like a Murderer's Axe onto this, I can tap it. But still have the Maw, so I have to keep tapping that. They put a Murderer's Axe onto the 4/6, make it a 6/4, and I don't tap that one. I guess I kind of have to trade, I guess. Look for another Bound by Moonsilver for lucky. Steadfast Cathar, not a Bound by Moonsilver. Okay, so I need a chump blocker. Just play two humans and there's a chump blocker right there. They can't tap either of them. Yeah, they're at 12 now from all that life gain, so I'm not just playing a True Faith Sensor and getting more damage with the spirits. Just gonna play two cards that the priest can't tap. If they dump all their mana into Flipping Captive, I can chump it. They could go like dump all the mana into Flipping Captive, discard what they draw, and buff it as well. That would threaten to kill me in one attack, and we would have to chump. If they just flip the Captive, they're only attacking for 4 and not 5, and I don't have to immediately chump. Okay, they're going to choose to force the chump block here. So we chump with the smaller one, because Logger could become a 4/2 trample. Although if it does, it'll... Well, it will, but it is a werewolf now, so they can tap it with the priest. So I need to have a spirit up, but I can't, because they can tap one spirit now and then one during the next turn. Or they could tap the Timber Shredder now, something else next turn. So Hamlet Captain's a great draw, because they can't tap that. But I think I do still need to play around top deck removal, ideally. But I guess the only way to do that would be to not attack at all. Because if they top deck a removal spell, they can removal spell Captain and tap down my non-human. Yeah, we're not playing True Faith Sensor. I mean, we're not equipping True Faith Sensor, because we're going to play Hamlet Captain, so... Go to combat. They probably do tap the Timber Shredder, I imagine. Yes, they are going to tap the Timber Shredder. So, if they top deck a removal spell, I die unless I don't attack at all. Because all they have to do is removal spell Captain and tap one spirit, even if I poke them for just one. I think I'm going to poke them for 0 for now, because I've got these clue tokens to get ahead. And I'm playing just Hamlet Captain because I don't want to double spell for the Timber Shredder. I want to force them to keep tapping that so they can't double tap me. Make them keep tapping the Timber Shredder pre-combat. I probably should have done this during my turn, but I like being able to threaten to have something here. But if I did this during my turn and I hit a land, we could have played our land for turn last turn, which could have been nice. Okay. Let's see what we do hit off of it. It is land. Courageous Outrider. So we're just going to play one spell here, so we just play the Courageous Outrider, I think. But then I get to have 2 humans up as blockers, so they need 2 removal spells to kill me. Right, they tap the Timber Shredder. We actually get to ping for 1 with the Spirit this turn if I want to. Or I could still hold the Spirit back, so I chump with a Spirit and get towards threatening a big human attack later. Go to combat. I guess I'll deal 0 again, so I threaten a large human attack soon. If they don't tap the Spirit. Pre-combat. Ooh. Land, land, land. Spirit. Not ideal. See what they've got. They have 2 cards in hand. This is a really close game. We've still got extra value if the game goes longer. I've got another clue to sacrifice at some point to dig. Our True Faith Censor can turn our Courageous Outrider into a 5/5 Vigilance. Ooh, no attacks. Gives me enough mana to play and equip the Censor and sack the clue. All in one turn. I think I'm going to sack the clue before I do anything else, because it might be something better. Like a bound to put on the Abomination. Okay, it's just a land. Alright, so I still have the mana to do everything else. And these creatures do not attack well against the Abomination, nor does the Timber Shredder, to be fair. So I guess we're just putting a Censor onto the Spirit, which is just going to get tapped by Priest anyway. But it's not like putting the Censor on anybody else does anything. I guess I could put the Censor on one of these just to make my double blocks against Abomination better. I have a 5/5 and a 2/2. I'd still have to triple block. They'd still be able to kill 2 of the 3. 7/8. But I guess they kill all 3 right now if there isn't a True Faith Censor on one of them. I don't know. I think I still just put it on Spirit. Just force them to keep using Priest so they don't get a double tap. During my end step out of nowhere. Yeah, they're just going to tap the Spirit over and over now. Pass turn. Ooh, Provisioner. Another human gets +2/+2. 5, 6, 7? That won't make it big enough to attack into the Abomination still. If I chump attack with Hamlet Captain, it will. Right, I can make this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Make it an 8/8 by attacking with Captain alongside it. And put a True Face Sensor on it. Probably just extra bold, because they're starting to stack up cards in hand that might be able to like triple up into lethal or something. Whoa, tap the Timber Shredder here. That feels like them trying to bait me into attacking here. That's like them goading me. Being like, do it. Huh. I think I still do it, right? Because, like, if they kill the Hamlet Captain on attacks, I still have this Vigilant Courageous Outrider on blocks, so I'll have 2 humans up on blocks. The Outrider and the Provisioner, and I put them to 2 so that if they don't just kill me, I kill them on the next turn. But if I try to just attack with Spirit here, I lose out on the +2/+2. I just hit them to 8. It's still going to take a while to get the kill. Just tap 1 more creature. They need 2 removal spells to kill me still. They have to kill this human and this human, because Priest doesn't do it. Well, let's see what the trick is if I do lose here. Is it just double removal? We'll know about it for game 2 at least. We do get got. We don't get got, alright. See, I was going to say, I think that's going to be worth it because it threatens that 2-turn kill so much better than like anything else we can do. Scary game. Scary game. So I don't love with their big emerge card, I don't love our pacifism style removal, but it's our only removal, so I think we have to keep it in. And the priest did end up being worth it. They had the big creatures, the Abomination, and the Abundant Maw there. They've got great graveyard recursion, not anything we can really do about that. We can play around it a little bit, try to pacify their best threats, and hope they don't draw a sacrifice card, so there's some spots where our pacifism is going to be good. We only saw 1 emerge card from them, right? So it's going to be bad against that 1 emerge card, but great against the graveyard recursion. So, you know, you win some, you lose some on that one. Yeah, we only saw like 4 creatures all game. So who knows? The human to non-creature count, or human to non-human count, but the non-humans were big enough to really matter for Sigardian Priest, so I think I'm keeping that in here. Their power 4 greater creatures really mattered for collective effort. I am pretty sure this is another round where I'm just gonna run it exactly back. Did not see a lot of removal from them this time. There's 1 Rabid Bite that we saw. Yeah, not a lot. I think the mantle's fine. Do I like the True Faith Sensor better than the mantle again, though? I don't think so, because the random flying could be pretty big in this matchup. We saw 0 cards that block flyers. Didn't see any 1 toughness hate for the Cathar. I'm just running it back. Just going to call it the same deck that we called it from the start. As we head into game 2 of round 2. Our opponent's going to be on the play here. Pretty big fan of this hand. With that Recruiter into Byway Courier and a Paladin for the end game. Based on the makeup of their deck, we don't need the Priest out till quite a bit later, so it's okay if we don't curve out with that on 2. Our opponent did have to take a couple mulligans, which feels pretty good for us. Ooh, we drew into a Travel Prep. That's probably getting cast before Priest as well. Again, Priest looking like a very late game card in this matchup, but a good one. There's a Lingering Souls from our opponent with the black mana too. That's going to be an issue. I don't hate just trading Recruiter into 2 of these spirits if they let me. They do not. Yeah, this is going to be a hard race now because they're going to have 4 1/1 flyers. As well as 2 mana to do anything else. Oh my god, Travel Prep, Lingering Souls, they're doing the thing. They're going to double Travel Prep the flyers. Yep. This is not going to be an easy race. I could double Travel Prep, but I think I want to try to wait till I have a Lifelinker down if I'm lucky. So I'm just going to drop Cathar Priest this turn and jam for 5. I think that's reasonable. Lingering Souls with the ability to flashback it is so massive here. Obviously with the Travel Prep too is a big thing, but 4 flyers is not going to be easy to beat. So there's a Weirding Wood flashback to Lingering Souls. No, play a Wildfield Scarecrow rather than flashback the Lingering Souls. I am very happy to see that. So now I have the time to play a Paladin and try to Travel Prep it up and maybe get 2 turns of life left. Barely, but otherwise I would just be dead right now because they would just hit for 8 this turn in the sky. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, I mean, I've got a Priest to tap down a Scarecrow as a blocker next turn. But I guess they get to keep the 1/1 flyers now as blockers to try to live another turn after this. I'm going to have exactly... Well, I'm going to have slightly more than enough, but I will have enough mana to use both parts of Travel Prep and tap something down next turn. Alright, so Lingering Souls, get the 1/1s, play a land, sack a clue to draw a card, still 3 mana up. Go down to 2. I can gain 5 life here to go to 7. If I can do enough damage to force them to chump with both spirits, we can still be in this. So that means we Priest the Scarecrow and threaten 9. No matter how they block. So they block Paladin. Let's say block Paladin, block Courier. So we need to get it to where... Basically, we have to get it to where these 3 deal 9 damage to them. Otherwise, they can just block Paladin and save 7 damage on board. So these 3 have to deal 9. That's easy enough to do with Travel Prep. Really, however we use it, it's going to be enough to threaten to have these 3 deal 9 damage. But we'll spread it out as much as possible here. Boom. Exactly 9. Tap the Scarecrow to force the double Spirit chump. They go chump there, take 6. If they only chump with 1, they have to take 9. So this way, they have to chump with both the flyers, and we go to 7, which means we take 6 in the sky on the crackback. And then we kill them next attack. Unless they top deck something. Yep, that was exactly enough damage there to force the double chump. So they crack back for 6 instead of 7 on board. Subjugator Angel taps our whole board, but it's already tapped. And they put us to 1. And we kill them on the crackback. Incredibly close games that round, even if game 2 was pretty fast overall. Even on the mulligan to 5, that just shows off the power of their deck there with the Lingering Souls Travel Prep combo. We're doing the miniature version of that without the ability to flashback Lingering Souls, and it's been pretty good for us, but flashing back both of these is super, super gross, so really powerful stuff from our opponent. Rough mulligan for them. If they had all those cards in their opening 7, we probably would have just straight lost because they would have had 2 more cards to play around with. That might have been enough to give them the flexibility to win that race. Super, super close game. We end it with 1 life, but it is going to be a victory for us. We are now 2-0 in the matches, 4-0 in the games. Excellent, excellent spot to be. No matter what, getting a positive record In this traditional draft, it's going to be 2 wins, 1 loss at worst, but hopefully we can get a 3rd win as we head into the final battle. And here we are now for round 3, the final round of today's traditional draft. We are going to be on the play by our opponent's choice. So I imagine most of the time that means they're on a deck that's going to be really, really nice in the late game and they want to get extra card draw going. Pretty bold to do if you don't have a lot of good early defenses, but if you do, like our blue-red deck with 5 galvanic bombardments, you can get some advantage to getting an extra card early. If you're any kind of aggressive deck, you basically always want to go on the play because you want to get your creatures on board and try to get in underneath your opponent's deck. Get your stuff on board first before they do, so you're on the attacks and they're on the blocks. So they're probably a bit grindier here. Or they just really like drawing cards, which is also fair. Alright, we're not going to travel prep with only 1 creature on board. The one awkward part about travel preparations is that it does not do anything... Well, it doesn't do as much with only 1 creature on board. It only puts 1 counter on 2 target creatures. So you have to have 2 creatures on board to get the full value. So that's the awkward part about travel preparations. It doesn't just fit into our curve perfectly here. Main phase Shieldmate from our opponent. They might just be newer to the set, newer to the game, newer to the drafting. I would not really just play that main phase 1 generally. I think I'd rather Outrider than try to like buff up Cathar with Thraben Inspector with prep to get in. I will send in the Cathar though, because it's a free bluff. I've got 4 mana up, so they have to consider combat tricks. So they might just take the damage. And our Cathar is not going to block anything well. It blocks as a 2/1, so we'll attack in here. Alright, they are going to go for the block, so let's drop Courageous Outrider. Draw another card. Boom. That is a much better Outrider than the last one we cast. We missed last time, but this time we hit another 3/4 lifelink. Now we're just going to jam 2 of these out in a row and then just put all the counters on them, maybe? That would be weak to Bound by Moonsilver style 1-for-1 removal, but I'm pretty cool with stacking all of our eggs into one basket. Just, it's like, you know, in real life, when you think about it, when are your eggs not all in one carton? You don't just have like 4 baskets of eggs in the fridge, so we'll just stack it all onto these Faithbearer Paladins. These are our 2 cartons of eggs. It'll be okay. Alright, I was going to say I might have to play around the trick here, but Outrider's value is really when it hits the board. The 3/4 body itself, I can trade a combat trick into it. But they decide not to attack, so let's just drop some Faith Bearers. I imagine our opponent's going to end up sideboarding out the Sigardian Priest, because even if we do have a couple non-humans in this deck, game 1 it looks like they're going to see exclusively humans, and this Sigardian Priest is going to be rough. So let's drop a Faith Bearer Paladin and pass here. Ooh, travel preparations is going to make the board state large. They go up to 4 power, 5 toughness if they put it on both those. They could also spread it out a little. They are choosing to keep their eggs in separate baskets, but even having a single 4/5 is pretty big here. Luckily, we've got our own travel preparations to get our paladins larger than their stuff, but I think this is pretty decent overall. Alright, so I've got exactly enough mana to drop a Paladin and a Thraben Inspector here, so let's do that. Set up some card draw for later, and now we've got the 2 creatures we want to jam all of our +1/+1 counters onto. Pass the turn. Pretty large board state. They've still got 3 cards in hand. We're just going to be staring at each other for a little while. Just hanging out until we get some travel preps going. Which I guess is next turn, but they're still just going to be 5/6 creatures, and 5/6s don't attack that great against their current stat lines. So Wolfkin Bond, yeah, this is going to be a cluttered match in general. Lots of ways to buff the board, get some more creatures out. I expect to see a lot of board stalls here, so maybe sideboarding in our flyer could be good in this match. Because there's going to be a lot of staring at each other. So we've got 7 mana potentially, which is perfect. Double travel prep and play a byway courier. I could also just draw a card and play a byway courier because it's not like either of us are attacking right now, even if I double travel prep. So that lets me save the travel prep for now, just in case I find my flyers soon. I only have 1 lingering soul, so it's not super likely, but potentially in the future. And True Faith Sensor is really nice in a board stall like this, because the worst case scenario with that card is I can start using it to buff cards like Byway Courier into being like 5/3s, which just keeps trading off 1 for 1. Trade my smaller creatures up a little bit if I can, or just trade them into the board and draw a card when they die. Speaking of cards that are great in board stalls like this, Duskwatch Recruiter is a card draw engine. So I can Recruiter, Travel Prep once, and equip a True Faith Sensor somewhere. If I make a Byway Courier, what is it going to be? 3 toughness, 5 power, a 5/3. It trades into a Sigardian Priest or Faithbearer at worst. I like that. I'm going to do that. I actually think I'm cool to still hold on to the travel prep here, and we can just dump our mana into Duskwatch Recruiter's ability post-combat. I think our matchup's pretty reasonable here. I mean, we have not seen anywhere near their whole deck yet. But with some cards like True Faith Sensor, maybe siding in another flyer, we can have some good cards for board stalls. We'll have to see what they've got, but they might have their own as well. They just haven't drawn into theirs. Alright, Apothecary Geist certainly counts, and they have a Spirit on board, the Drogskull Shieldmate, so they get the life gain from it too, which is pretty big. I guess we've got a slight issue if Duskwatch Recruiter flips, which is that the priest can tap it. I think the bigger issue is that we don't actually want it to flip, because then I don't get to dump mana into it to try to draw more creatures. Oh my god. What do we take here? We might take our own priest since they have a flyer on board. Which is awkward because Provisioner's great and Spectre's great, but I think it's actually just priest. Funnily enough, deal with their Apothecary Geist attacks. Whoa, alright. 1 green mana up here. I don't remember a Giant Growth style trick for 1 mana in the format, so we're just gonna go for the best on-board trades, which is to clear out the lifelinker, clear out the potential +1/+1 counter provider, trade into a wolf, and trade a 3/4 lifelink into a 4/5. And we'll see what 1 mana trick exists in this format if I'm forgetting one, but on board these trades are all fine. They're not horrible for our opponent, but I think they are better for us. Because a lot of stuff dies on both sides, and it's just going to be trades, so we just clear things up a little bit. That's fine with me. Now I can jam in with Paladin already. I get my Priest, tap down the Apothecary Geist. Because Paladin can already attack, and I'm pretty fine with my life total, I think I'm going to Censor onto the Recruiter. And that's going to get an extra 2 damage in that we wouldn't have gotten in otherwise, because the 2/2 wouldn't be attacking into the 2/3. So now we get Recruiter's 2 damage and True Faith Sensor's 2 damage going into their face instead of just the True Faith Sensor 2 that would have been going onto the Faith Bearer. And I'm just going to greed it out and make sure I've got great backups to any kind of board wipes or anything big that can happen. And I'm just going to keep getting value off Recruiter because I think we're in a solid lead on board to where I don't need to like dump all of my stuff out right now to stay ahead. So we can play it safe. I'm sure there is a board wipe or two in the format. Aim high. Get some damage in here. Pre-combat. Combat trick, another thing that generally not the best way to get a lot of value out of the spell. It is going to get them some damage here because I'm not doing... I don't think I'm blocking anywhere. But yeah, I'd basically always recommend trying to save those combat tricks for when somebody tries to declare a block. Somewhere where you can win the combat and like beat a different creature, or if you can like literally find lethal with it, go for it. But extra damage early, I think I'd rather just save it generally. I think I actually want Hamlet's Captain on this board. We have a lot of humans, so I'll take the Captain over the Pack Guardian. They just have a single byway courier to block with a 3/2. He's actually a good blocker for Recruiters, so I suppose I move. Let's definitely play the Captain. I guess I could just travel prep now, rather than moving the True Face Sensor. That gets that big enough to attack, and then we can do this, and everybody's huge. They have no good blocks. They have to chump to not die. That's exact lethal. And they're just going to take it. Accept defeat there, and we will start the final round off 1-0 as we head into game 2. And honestly, with how well the True Faith Sensor played in that board stall, I think Lunarch Mantle would play really well in these board stall kind of games as well. I think we're kind of like pre-sideboarded. I don't really think we need the Dawn Gryph, and I didn't see anything that it... I didn't see anything that our deck plays particularly terribly against. So I think I'm just going to run it back. But I could swap out like a Cathar for a Dawn Gryph or something like that. But I'm pretty happy to just run it back. Heading into the second game of round 3, potentially the final battle if we can win this game. All right, here we are for game 2 of round 3. This is going to be a mulligan. This is certainly keepable. The Duskwatch Recruiter into Lingering Souls being a massively powerful curve if we draw the lands for it. Seeing as we already need to draw some lands here, I think I ditched the 4-drop. We are desperate for those lands. I suppose if we can flip the Crawling Horde Howler, we could play the Outrider for only 3. Maybe it is worth a little risk here to drop the Courier and try to get that kind of combo going towards Outrider. Right, even if I don't have the Courier in this hand, I can just dump mana into Recruiter when I don't have anything to do for 3. I think that's probably reasonable. We didn't see a lot of removal from our opponent. I don't think we actually saw any removal spells in that one game. So if Recruiter can stick around, then that's our 3-mana play. If we're stuck on 3 lands and we have nothing else to do, we can still dump mana into that. And if we're stuck on 3 lands and we have nothing else to do and we're dumping mana into that, then we're not casting spells, and it will eventually flip to the Howler that lets us cast the Outrider for only 3. So I think this is reasonable. All right, and we are going to get a victory in the final round. Seems like they just left arena, maybe closed the client, maybe went to do something IRL. Our opponent got a life while I sat there and stared on the computer like always. But in the end, who's the real winner? Because we won the game of digital children's card games. We are 3-0 out of this draft, 6-0 in the games. We didn't lose a single game yet again. These Shadows over Innistrad traditional drafts have been going insanely well for me. I think we've been ending up with solid decks, but nothing that's looked insane. Like, we have been missing on bombs. We're not super high on removal. There are some flaws in our decks that could lead to some losses, but it does seem like Shadows over Innistrad is generally a bit lower power level than recent draft formats that have gotten so insane, where it feels like when you are missing just a few of those key things, things can really fall apart quickly. So yeah, still had a lot of great value stuff going on overall. Again, our only quote-unquote bomb is collective effort. We didn't cast it a single time, so didn't really bomb anybody out. We just got some great value from Duskwatch Recruiters, Thraben Inspectors, Byway Couriers, drawing us extra cards. We curved out pretty well with a lot of humans, some of them really large for the mana cost, like the Gossip Mongers. Just kind of did everything that we intended to do with the deck, played a pretty aggressive green-white build, cleared some stuff out of the way with a couple removal spells, and found some extra buffs to get damage in with True Faith Sensors, Travel Preps, and Lunarch Mantles to try to get our creatures bigger than our opponents. I guess technically we never drew the Lunarch Mantle, so we didn't get to do that, but we did do the True Faith Sensor and the Travel Prep quite a bit, and those were key players in this deck to keep these smaller creatures relevant throughout the game. So very, very nice stuff from this draft. So we are going to grab our 2,500 gems, 6 packs, and 2 play-in points towards those future qualifier play-in events. Massive prizes for today. Just grab those, and that is going to end today's draft. As always, I'd like to thank my patrons and YouTube members for their support, as well as you for watching the video. If you enjoyed this video and you're interested in seeing more, you can always like, comment, and subscribe to tell the YouTube algorithm to send you some more of these videos in your recommended feed. If you'd like to catch me live, you can check out the Twitch channel in the link in the description below, where I'm live every Wednesday. And if you'd like to support the channel directly, you can check out the Patreon link in the description below. But other than that, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon for some more Magic Arena.